Well, hi again, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Knights Training Camp Bulletin on all of our social media channels, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and I always forget the fourth one, Shane, but there's a lot.
Twitch.
I think I said
Come on,
that
Dave. That's why I'm here. I got to remember the one.
I can't keep track of all, but wherever you're watching, and whatever form you're watching it on, great to have you with us. Dave Gosher, Shane Knighty, from our studios here in downtown Summerlin at City National Arena. And for the Golden Knights and the rest of the NHL, day number 2 of training camps got underway yesterday as the NHL got into Phase 3 as they look to move forward and resume the 2020 season and, of course, the 2020 Stanley Cup Playoffs. But great to have you with us here. The guys, as you saw a moment ago, just slowly starting to trickle onto the ice here at CNA. But you know, a huge step yesterday, Shane, and a step I think all of us and the league has been waiting for and hoping, you know, fingers crossed for the best to be able to get to this point. And they did yesterday, the Golden Knights, with their first practice and the first time on the ice here in training camp.
Well, and if you listen to head coach Pete DeBoer afterwards, very happy with what he saw. You know, I think for coaches, it's, you know, kind of first glance at his team to assess what took place over the, you know, phase 1 and 2, and very happy with his players putting in that work in that time. The commitment from them, first of all, to stay here in Las Vegas, which allowed them, you know, to work out, then to move onto the ice in phase 2 in the smaller groups, and that's just helped them get ready. And you know, I think day 1, and it's something I heard across the league listening to other you know, programs throughout the NHL, coaches saying, you know, that's first day, there's so much energy, there's so much excitement. You'd expect that from the players, and they think they'll have that for a few days. And Pete DeBoer also talked about managing his players. He said they were going to really listen to them about days off, about, you know, how to manage that energy level so they can have efficient practices where they can get the pace up, they can play with that energy. And that's going to be one of the things. There's going to come a time, it's a long camp. There's going to be times where it's not as fun. When you get to that middle part, and then it'll ramp up near the end as they get set, hopefully to, you know, enter phase 4 where they play the games. But a real good first day here for the Golden Knights. You can see the players, a lot of smiles, everybody happy to be back on the ice and trying to get themselves in form for the start of phase 4.
Of course, the biggest name not on the ice for the Golden Knights yesterday, Marc-Andre Fleury, did not practice on day 1 of training camp, so that left the goaltenders of Robin Lehner and Oscar Dance. Pete DeBoer was asked about that on his Zoom conference with the media afterwards. He said, no big issue, maintenance day. And he said, you know, you got to remember, a lot of these guys have been skating now for 4 or 5 straight weeks when you know, phase 1, phase 2, and now into phase 3. But I think that was a sigh of relief for all Golden Knights fans, to say the least.
Well, he's been on the ice, and yeah, just he's a guy, you don't need to run these players straight through. They're going to have certain days and that they can take off. They've got 3 goaltenders in camp, and if you have that, you know, the option, it's a luxury to be able to rest guys if they need it at whatever time to make sure that they're going to be ready, feel good about their body, how they're feeling. You know, I'm sure after day 1 there might be a little bit of soreness, but that'll start to wear out here as they get more into kind of the game conditioning shape.
For the Golden Knights, day 2, of course, they had a scrimmage yesterday. All teams, or most teams now, are as healthy as they've been, right? And one of the things that Pete DeBoer touched on yesterday too, Shane, was I think all coaches right now are keeping their fingers crossed. How long is this going to last, right? And I guess that is one of the concerns, even though they have been skating on their own for a while, not in a formal practice setting like they are now. You know, that is something where they've had this 4-month hiatus, or maybe 3.5 months before they started to get back on the ice. You know, fingers crossed, stay healthy as long as you can, because all these teams and all these guys are in the same boat.
Well, and the harsh reality of sports, injuries. It's a part of the game. It happens. You can't predict it. You have to deal with it. And one of the things that Pete also talked about was the depth of the Golden Knights. He said you need that for a long playoff run. You need it in a normal playoff run, let alone one that is crammed in where you're going, you know, at such a feverish pace. You got to make sure you have guys that have that ability to step in, guys you feel confident with, guys that can do different roles, provide different sparks for your team. So they've been able to have that, and we'll see as they go forward.
We invite you to send us your questions as well, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. But as you see, the Golden Knights just about ready to kind of get going here for day number 2 of training camp. You mentioned the condensed schedule, Shane, and it's a race to the finish, really a sprint. All of it's going to happen in 65 days, right? From when they get going until, if the Stanley Cup final goes a distance, it would end October 2nd. So, and you don't really see this much in the playoffs anymore, playing on back-to-back days, right? You know, usually it's, play on Monday, day off Tuesday, play Wednesday every other day with some travel involved. Not anymore with everyone at the hub.
And that's the thing. Travel's gone. You take travel out of the equation. Maybe that helps a little, and we'll have to see how it all plays out going forward. But, maybe travel's, the one kind of trade-off as a positive.
Somebody on Facebook chiming in with a question, and we invite you to send them along, wanting to know if the border closure between the U.S. and Canada is going to be an issue. The answer is no. The Canadian government has kind of taken care of that, for lack of a better way to put it, because I believe the border's closed. You know this as a Canadian. August,
I do.
End of August, right?
Yes, it's closed to the end of August. If you did want to go back, as myself being a Canadian passport holder, I can go back, but I have to quarantine for 14 days privately before I can go. But I think the NHL, the Players Association, made sure that they worked out these things ahead of time before they chose the hub cities, or else they wouldn't have chose 2 Canadian cities. So that was one of the big, obstacles, hurdles, if you want to call it, in the negotiations to find the hub cities, and they had to deal with the Canadian government and make sure everybody was allowed to cross the border.
Robin Lehner, as we said, we got a shot of him earlier out on the ice, and when he came over from Chicago for the first bunch of games, he had the Hawks gear. Not anymore. Now he's got the full Golden Knights get up. Chatting with Mike Rosati, the Golden Knights
look at those pads.
Goaltending coach. Look at that look.
It's got the knight on there. I know, very active on Twitter, Robin Lehner. I think he posted his new gear, and there's a good look at it on the ice. That looks fantastic. I gotta say, between him and Marc-Andre Fleury, is there better goaltenders that have stylish gear? Like Fleury, the gold pads, the gold helmet, and Lehner going a little different direction, but those look great.
Do you have a recollection as to when that started to change, goaltending? Because the reason I asked, because I saw a video the other day, like the 1987 finals, 88 finals. When did that?
I think it started in the 90s. One guy I really remember that kind of took it to a new one was, remember Trevor Kidd?
Sure.
Did the checkered pads, I believe, with Toronto.
Yeah.
And then, guys started to bring a little bit of their own flair, their own design. Masks started getting more elaborate. I believe it started in the 90s. It was already kind of in effect, but it's amped up now. Guys have a lot more input. There's certainly technology has allowed them to do a lot more. But I like the 2 nights that they're back to back when the pads are closed, and then individual. But,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. There is talk about players adding a little individuality to their helmets. I'm kind of a traditionalist. It's an interesting thought. It might take. Hey, I've been able to evolve a lot as the game has, but I don't know if I'm ready. Imagine players with their helmets kind of individually designed. It's a thought. It's not like over in Europe though, where they're plastered
all
with
the ads
plastered
on
with ads.
Yeah, you are a man of the times.
A man of the times.
No question about it.
You're a man of the people. You say. At least that's the way you refer to yourself.
That's right. Whether it's true or not, it's a whole different story. But yeah, the Golden Knights here about ready to kind of gear up for day 2 of training camp. And as we said, it's kind of reading around the league yesterday, Shane, is, and we touched on this, but it bears repeating, and the Golden Knights mentioned it as well, how important this period of time is, not only on the ice, but off of it, right? There's no quarantine right now in terms of, once they get into that bubble starting later on this month, that's a different story. Yeah. But right now, the importance of being smart about it, masking up at all times, and really, really paying strict attention to social distancing and all the safety precautions that all of us have been told to follow.
And that was echoed throughout the league by every coach, every team, the leaders of each and every team.
That's assistant coach Ryan Craig, by the way, just on the dry marker board, diagramming first drill or 2. Another question from the Facebook people as we take a look at the team huddled around Ryan Craig is, with this season ending as late as early October, quite obviously, how will the start of next season be affected? It's going to be strange. They're targeting December the 2nd to start next season. The draft would be, 4 or 5 days after.
And then free agency.
And then it's training camps scheduled to start November the 17th. And then the next season scheduled to begin December 2nd. I wonder, Shane, as I'm sure you do, and a lot of us do, though, as much as the league is targeting December 2nd, are they going to start next season without any fans in the building? I find that hard to believe that they would do that. Could you do it half capacity? Maybe. I don't know. But as much as they say December 2nd, if they're not able to have any fans in the building, then my thought would be that perhaps maybe even they push that back.
Well, we're hoping the landscape of the world has changed for the better by that time. I think that's, it's something nobody knows right now. So you put dates in place, you're hopeful, but I believe they want to try and get fans back in the buildings for the start of next season, which, we certainly hope it can get to that point, and we'll see what happens. Right now, it's exciting to think about that. There's not much of a break. It's a quick turnaround, but now the focus really is, as we talked about earlier, these next 2 weeks here in Phase 3 before they can get to those secure bubbles and begin playing games, begin the play-in, the round robin, and the Stanley Cup Playoffs. So lots to take place. I'm kind of taking it day to day and enjoying each day without trying to look too far ahead, but remaining positive and optimistic.
It's a good approach in life in general,
it is.
Shane. Well done.
I'm a philosopher.
I've never heard you refer to yourself as that. That's terrific.
No, and you probably won't hear anybody else.
Yeah. Question from Scott chiming in today. Will this year's Cup be harder to win than normal? And
yes.
No question about it, right?
There's a lot of people, out there that say, well, it's not the same. But, and this is coming from my personal opinion. Yes, I think you listen to coaches, players around the league, they're saying the exact same thing. This is difficult, especially if you're one of the play-in teams. So, hopefully that's not the case who wins, as we hope the Golden Knights can win. But if you're a playoff team, it's 5 rounds of hockey. You gotta win to play in, then you gotta win each round. You gotta teams that are healthy, teams that are fresh. I think this is going to be good hockey. There's a lot of people who think it might be watered down. They've been off too long. It's going to take a while to get. I think the way these athletes are conditioned nowadays, the way they take care of themselves, that they will get up to speed very, very quickly and be ready to play some great hockey. And I think, we saw that a few years ago with the World Cup. Played in August. Guys came in for a quick camp. They've been off. The same type of training, but they came in and performed. Now, how's it going to look without fans? Well, that's going to be on the players, and I think they will adjust very quickly to put their focus on how they need to play and make it exciting and create their own kind of energy, atmosphere, whatever you need from that bench to perform at the highest level.
We should mention the Golden Knights, as they have yesterday and again here today, using both rinks here at City National Arena. You're looking at the Summerlin Hospital rink, of course, the Star Nursery rink, also being used, and we invite you to continue to send in your questions to us. And to your point, Shane, of normally it takes you 16 wins to win the Stanley Cup. If you're in that playoff round this year, it's going to take you 19 wins, right? You've got to win a 3 out of 5 and then 4 more best of 7. So,
well, even if it's a round robin team, they've got to, depending on where they see, it's going to be more wins.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's something the league tried to make that round robin tournament make it have some value, right? Yeah. And not just go through the motions while the other teams in the play-in rounds were playing essentially playoff games to get in. So in any event, the Golden Knights, of course, they're round robins. First up, Dallas Stars, and Colorado and St. Louis also on the docket as well when they head to Edmonton. So that's kind of where they're at right now.
It's interesting seeing these huddles around the dry erase board right now. This is something you'll see this earlier, where the coaches want to make sure this is kind of showing everybody on the board, getting the plans. But as they move along in this camp, it'll go with more pace, right? There'll be less and less of that, less and less of those teaching moments as these guys get more and more comfortable back to the pace they need to play with. I always talk of playing that upbeat, fast-paced style. Well, that's the way you like to practice. And this is kind of more of an early signs in camp where it's, you take a little more time to describe the plays, to describe the systems, the drills, and then eventually you pick up the pace and get going a little bit more. So
we did have a question coming in about the status of Cody Glass. I think Kellen Primitive touched on this a little while ago. He is not scheduled to kind of be part of this.
No.
Right? So,
a young player, and sure,
yeah.
absolutely, they'd love to have him, but for a young player like that, his health and getting back, not only for his health, but his ability to train, to put on size. This is a young guy that's still going to, grow into that frame at 6'3", so sometimes that can be a benefit for him to put a little extra time in the gym and make sure when next season starts, he's ready to go.
We have questions as well about how to watch the upcoming Stanley Cup Playoffs. The league's going to announce the broadcast schedule here shortly with dates and times. And I guess they already have announced the round robin card and the first rounds and so forth. But Shane and I, along with the rest of our crew, will have all the exhibition games, round robin games, and also first round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs on AT&T Sportsnet. So we'll be with you. We'll be, as we said, sitting right here doing it, right here from our studio, calling it off a monitor. But that's kind of where we're at right now. I have another question, Shane, and this is kind of an interesting little wrinkle in all this about when the families were going to be able to join the players as this moves on, and the answer would be if your team gets through to the conference finals in either the East or the West. Yeah,
and they'll wait till after the first two rounds are played, and then if your team's in either the Eastern or Western Conference final, that'll be a time when families are allowed to come for a period. I believe they have to stay in, do they quarantine and then move in?
I believe so.
So, but that was something the Players Association, it was really a question. Listening to Matthew Schneider talk about, who works for the association, said the players really voiced their opinion on that. And they wanted to try and simulate the World Championship style. At World Championships, players go over, they play for about 3 weeks, then families come over and join near the end. So I think he actually said Jason Spezza was the guy who kind of said, why don't we use the World Championship model to bring families in? And I think that was kind of where that discussion began, and eventually able to agree upon putting it into the conference finals and finals for those teams.
Another good question coming in, this one from Phil, wanting to know what is the benefit of winning the round robin? The benefit is if you win the round robin, you are the number one seed in your conference. So right now as it stands, it's Boston in the East, St. Louis in the West. But if in the round robin that changes, then they go by how you finish in the round robin. So you'd have a chance to be the number one seed in either conference and then play the lowest, play that eighth seed as they move forward.
And that's exactly what Vegas is going to try and do. Is they take on Dallas, St. Louis, and Colorado to try and win those games and grab the number one seed.
The other part of it, a couple of other things we should note, not to confuse people like myself, is if there's a tie points-wise in that round robin. So let's say the Golden Knights end up with 4 points and the Blues end up with 4 points. Then they default back to winning percentage in the regular year. Yeah, the Blues would get it. So that's the only thing that kind of, if Golden Knights end up winning all 3 games and they get 6 and the other teams don't do it, then they're the number one seed. Obviously, and someone asked about this, there's Pete DeBoer at the board now. No home ice advantage either, and that's...
There's one thing.
Last
change. How are they going to work that?
Well, and I wonder, how do they deem who's the home? There's going to be a home team.
There's going to be a home team that'll, last
right.
change, you talk to coaches, that's a big deal, especially, right. Your ability for matchups and play like that. So there will be, obviously the top seed. It'll play out just like you were. There is no home ice advantage, but you will have that home last change advantage. It will go 2-2 and then 1-1-1 for a 7-game series.
My guess is, just my guess, Golden Knights are the higher seed. They're the home team for the first 2 games of the series. Nashville, for the sake of arguments, home team for games 3 and 4, and then you flip it accordingly. But yeah, certainly a lot to look forward to for the National Hockey League as they move forward here. Day 2 of phase number 3 as they move forward and get set for the 2020 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Got a Twitch question coming in. Who's going to be the third line center? That's a good question. As of yesterday, right? As of yesterday, it was.
Well, it's Nick Waugh.
Nick Waugh.
So here's the thing, and we mentioned depth off the beginning of the show. So you've got third line center. You got Nick Waugh that can jump in there. You got Chandler Stevenson who can jump in at center. Nick Cousins, who's centering the fourth, could jump to the third. You got Tomas Nosek. There's a lot of options. And I think that was one of the things, is the ability to have strength down the middle on any team at that center position. And the Golden Knights not only have strength, but they have depth. They have a lot of guys that are very versatile, which really lends a lot of tools if you're a head coach to have that ability to move guys around that can play the center position, play with strength. But right now, as it's lined up early in this camp, Nick Waugh centering Alex Tuck and Chandler Stevenson on the wing is who they have slotted at the moment on that third line.
Well, we're going to lay out just for a few seconds here and let you hear some more of the sights and sounds from day 2 of Golden Knights training camp here as they enter Phase 3. And Dave Gosher, Shane Knighty with you once again. Training Camp Bulletin here from City National Arena, downtown Summerlin. Of course, the Golden Knights using both of the rinks here at City National. You're looking at the Summerlin Hospital rink that has one group today, and then the Star Nursery rink has the other group of players. On this rink, you've seen Pete DeBoer and Ryan Craig, and on the other rink, of course, Ryan McGill and Steve Spott. And Mike Rosati, of course, here. You can see the goaltending coach for the Golden Knights. Some more really good questions coming in, Shane. We were asked about the maroon jerseys. Are those players injured, or is it just because they're alive? They are alive. They're fine. It's just they're all color-coded.
It's all color-coded.
Right?
And when I played in Boston, we actually called it the Merlot line.
Yes, that's
and
right.
It was very effective, and kind of ironically, it was the fourth line in Boston, and right now it's Reeves, Carrier, and Cousins that are wearing it here in Vegas. So.
A reminder as well, people have asked about practice. It is closed, quite obviously, with the times we're in. So just the players and media members that are social distance, separated social distance responsibly. So, but yes, practice closed here at City National.
And I have to correct, we had an earlier question.
Yes, who's the third line center?
So third line center,
depends on the day.
And I talked about how versatile the Golden Knights players can be. So today, the third line is kind of flipped a bit here with Pete DeBoer, and I imagine he's going to look at different combinations. That's the advantage of having camp. But Nick Waugh was centering Stevenson and Tuck. Now it's Stevenson centering Waugh on the right side and Tuck on the left. So the same line, just again the ability for both Stevenson and Waugh to take that center position. So I'm sure that's something they'll do, and that it could set up in a game, depending. Right-handed face-off man, left-handed face-off. That really allows you, depending where it is, offensive, defensive zone, which guy can go in and take the draw to a strong backhand.
Interesting as well, Shane, when you look a little bit around the NHL. We touched yesterday on the Golden Knights, and their health. They are as healthy as they've been all year long. I guess save for Cody Glass, as we mentioned, is not going to be a part of it. But Max Pacioretty and Mark Stone, both Stone had missed time. Pacioretty was going to miss time with injury when the pause came. Alex Tuck had battled injuries most of the season. You look at some of the other teams, and I was just kind of reading online here. Back as the first line right wing for the St. Louis Blues, Vladimir Tarasenko. He'd been out with a shoulder injury. Jake Gensel, shoulder injury with Pittsburgh, back as well. So
when you look around the league right now, I don't think I've ever seen stronger lineups because they have the full complement of players outside of Tampa Bay with Stamkos right now out of the lineup. But this is something you're going to see, and most teams hoping they can maintain that health heading into Phase 4. But a lot of strength on all these teams. You mentioned St. Louis. Yeah, Tarasenko missed the majority. Did not seem to slow down the Blues at all. Tarasenko out of the lineup, and they were still able to just carry on where they left off, winning the Stanley Cup. But, Pacioretty, Stone, Tuck, key guys that were out of the lineup at the pause, now back at 100% health.
Nick had a question for Shane.
Oh, boy.
Hopefully not too difficult. How many of these drills have changed from Gerard Gallant now to Pete DeBoer? Or there's some carryover, or what you've seen?
There's some carryover. You'll see only on this, but these drills will change. There's certain things, a coach wants to implement into the play. There'll be, slight things. Terminology is a big thing coaches use, but they've certainly changed. Depending on the system, whether it's a breakout, whether it's neutral zone, defensive zone coverage, specialty. There's all areas where it's changed. And Pete DeBoer talked about when he started about it was more tweaks, right? You don't want to overcomplicate everything for the players. You try to make the minor adjustments as you go in. You change a little thing in your drills. I think now it'll give them a little more time to maybe push some more things through here in this training camp. So it certainly changes from coach to coach. There are a lot that do to stay the same, but the drills will change. The terminology will change a little bit depending on who your coach is.
How much does it change from the olden days when you played?
Olden days, easy.
From a few years ago.
It has changed. I think practices now, they're a lot more up-tempo. I think the speed of the game, because we've seen how fast it's become, how it's evolved, the skill. I think there's a lot more creativity. It certainly changed a lot from when I kind of came in was the trap era, right? That was the Devils, early 2000s. And, practice was a lot slower. You worked. It wasn't as much pace to it as you see now. They do a lot of rushes. We've seen 2-on-1s. We've seen 1-on-1. Now you got 3-on-2s up the ice. It's more of a rush game. So that kind of style you'll see more in practice time for these teams in the Golden Knights to do different things. One's a rush, then it's a forecheck like we're seeing here. So that leads to a breakout, regroup, transition, back 3-on-2. And we did some of this, but I just think overall the pace wasn't as quick back then as it is now throughout a practice.
One of the things we see a lot, Shane, and it's certainly not unique to the Golden Knights, but all sports now is the use of video. You know, we hop on in normal times, we hop on a plane after a road game, and the coaches already have their laptops out and breaking down different things. Were you kind of on the cusp of that as well in terms of video being more prevalent?
There's no way we saw video. It started, like when I started, so the guy who started all the video for the NHL was a guy named Roger Nielsen.
Yeah.
Captain Video was his nickname, and he was the assistant coach for the Ottawa Senators when I went there. So we did video, but it was on, so you see the board they use on the wall. He had a long thing plugged in, and he'd draw during the game. Like now it's all computer, one button, you record everybody's shift, and then it's automatically streamed to the bench to the iPads. Back then, no, we had a video room, but he had a board with a long wire and a pen, and kind of drew on this board, and then it would show up on the screen of the game.
It was like an overhead projector.
It was it was not quite, but that it did evolve over the years as the video systems really ramped up, and now they're at a new level. The ability for them to get things in exact time is incredible. For players to watch the last shift that just happened, a scoring chance they missed, what could they have done? All those things have drastically changed from my time.
People asking questions, Shane, for us, what's it going to be like to be calling games from here? Certainly it'd be different. And look, there's no way to get around that.
What's going to be different for you? You say yours and I'll say for
mine. What's going to be different for me is... So we'll be calling it off monitors, obviously, and your vision will be limited to whatever that monitor is showing you. So your ability to maybe look away from the play, see if there's another player coming up the ice to join the rush, whatever the case may. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Things that you might take a glance at away from the heart of the play, you're just not going to be able to do. That would be one. Two would be, we're going to be sitting in a sterile studio. We're not going to be in the energy of a building, right, or the energy of T-Mobile, where I think you really you take a lot from that and you feed off of that. So that being said, we have talked with our friends at AT&T Sportsnet about, and I think the league has kind of tweaked this, and I've seen it in baseball and basketball. They're kicking it around of piping in some crowd noise. We'll have the effects mics as well, so you can hear the sounds of the game. But I think those would be the two biggest things for me. Is your vision is going to be limited to whatever that monitor shows you, and also just you've got to, like the players, you got to create your own energy because there's not going to be any fans in the building.
Well, and for me, we have a world feed, so it's not our feed, right? My biggest job is picking and finding replays and marking clips. Well, I won't have that ability now. I'll just have to go off of what the one feed is showing, so it won't be as we can show mainly Golden Knights on our telecast. It's going to be a mix of both teams, so that'll be the biggest thing for us. But you know what, Dave? I think in times like this, it gives us an opportunity to try some new things. We're going to try maybe be a little more interactive using Stormy with the fans via social media. There's a lot of ideas we're kicking around on how this is going to look and how it's going to work. So I'm excited at that. I'm excited at, first of all, just getting hockey back, but then seeing how it works and to try some new things.
Well, as you can see now, they're about to flood the ice here at the Summerlin Hospital rink. So the group that was on Star Nursery is going to come over here right after they get done flooding the ice, and then they will skate on this rink. So speaking of ice and flooding the ice, so Edmonton, the hub city in the west, Toronto in the east, games are going to just be packed in, right? You're going to have 3 games a day in Edmonton, 3 games a day in Toronto, day after day, at least in the early going.
Yeah.
Question about the quality of the ice, because that's
it's going to get beat up.
Usually play every other day if you're on a bit of a homestand, right?
It's going to take a bit of a beating. That's big bodies, a lot of cuts in the ice. Snow levels are going to build up. I'm sure they'll have the ability to have the shovels out there at the breaks. I don't know if they're going to try and adjust and maybe do a few more shovels throughout a period. But it's the situation they're all in. And I think it's mainly going to be worse early on when there's that many games, that heavy of a schedule. guys going on the ice. But Edmonton's been known for their good ice. We'll see how they can maintain it through that many games in a day.
Well, the Golden Knights, as we said, flooding the ice here, and the next group, the other group's going to shift over to skate on the Summerlin Hospital rink. We invite you to continue to send in your questions.
Yes.
Dave Gosher, Shane Knighty, great to have you with us here. Day number 2 of our training camp bulletin here from CNA. Somebody just said that, it wasn't a question, it was a statement that Rebecca says. Rebecca, can you get Rebecca's home address, because we'll send the money. It says we're the best broadcasters in the league.
Oh, Rebecca.
Rebecca, I don't. It's not even 11 o'clock. I don't know if maybe you've had an adult. What's going on? But thank you very much.
Now I got to deal with Dave all day with him hearing that.
I mean, dude, this is great. The rest of the day, Rebecca, I'm gonna say Rebecca thinks we're the best. So that's awesome.
That's great.
Thank you very much. But it'll be much different, Shane, and it's something that. But I will say this: under the circumstances. We will gladly take it. We're going to sit here. We're going to do the games, and I think for all of us, and I don't know where you fall in this. AT&T has reshown so many Golden Knights games from the first 3 seasons, but so it seems like in every other sports market in the country, they're doing the same thing due to lack of games in real time. But at some point, and I've started to gravitate, to watching the PGA Tour's back doing their thing. Even with no fans, just because it's something fresh and new.
I'm ready for sports on TV.
Yeah, well, you don't already know the outcome.
I watched UFC Saturday night. I had a great night watching that. I'm excited to call the games, to get Golden Knights hockey back on. But for me, and you, Dave, like hockey, it's kind of like a dream. Like we're going to have a full kind of March Madness style hockey tournament for the Stanley Cup. As it begins and plays its way through. I'm excited to watch hockey all day. I don't know if other people around me that have to deal with me will enjoy me being plastered in front of the TV for that many hours, but maybe we'll just live in here.
That's fine.
We can sit here and watch the games.
Set up a couple of cots.
Set up some cots, just basically live here. And that's what it's going to be like. It's going to be intense for that period of time as the players will try and vie for that Stanley Cup championship.
And it's funny, you think about how strange this all is, right? I was texting with actually one of my cousins yesterday, and I said, here we are. You would never ever think about you're going to be going to hockey games in July and August, right? Even September. I guess some training camp games in September. But I said it reminded me, and I'm sure you probably as a kid, I played summer hockey, right? And back in Rhode Island, it'd be hot, humid, middle of July, and it was great to be able to get out of all that heat and humidity, go into a rink for an hour and a half. You jump in the freezer for an hour and a half, and then come back out to the heat. So that was awesome.
You're lucky you got to play stuff. For me, I got one camp a week. I hung the skates up and didn't come back. But I grew up in a small town, so the ice wasn't really available throughout the summer. It was taken out around March, April, and then put in September. So
what did they do with the rinks in the summer? They used it for other stuff?
They used it for flea markets and
racquetball
things.
Racquetball,
flea markets. Nets. No, I hung up the skates, took out the clubs, the ball glove, played some other sports.
I retired after Little League from baseball. Probably a good move. Somebody asked a question of why are they using the 2 rinks? Quite honestly, it would get very cluttered out there if you had everybody all on the same rink. It does lead into a point though. Expanded rosters, right? This is not your usual 23 skaters and a couple of goaltenders.
Where they have 32?
32.
So there's a lot of players. So it allows them to break it up a little bit more and work with those groups and then bring them together when they need to play. So, it's just, I think it allows you to get more done in the same, if you had that many, it's talked about pace and practice. Well, if you have 10 defensemen out there, you're taking too much of a break. You got to roll through it as a normal practice.
Question coming in as well: do Toronto and Edmonton have a home ice advantage because they're in their own cities?
I don't
fans.
Think so.
They'll be in the bubble, right? Yeah. It's not like they're going to be in their homes.
I don't think there is.
And the only time they will be in their own locker rooms is if they are deemed the home team. It gets back to for their game. So the Oilers and the Leafs, if they're not the home team, they're going to be in a different locker room. They will not have the confines of their own rink, their own locker room. So Yeah, I think it's again, no. I think would be the answer.
I
especially
don't
these
see there being an advantage at all. But there's so much unknown. We don't know who's going to have advantages, how it's going to play. I think the one thing consistently repeated by players, coaches, anything is there is no time period. You don't have a grace period to get to your game. The teams that get to their game quickest out of the gate, in round robin, play in, and then playoffs, that's paramount to be successful.
Pretty much the two hottest teams in the league when this pause happened were the Golden Knights and the Philadelphia Flyers. Right, the Golden Knights had won, I think it was 11 out of 13, or right in that range, and the Flyers had ripped off a great stretch of hockey as well. There's always that other school of thought, Shane, of, does this benefit anybody? I mean, but everyone's in it. Does it benefit a younger team with a ton of energy? Does it benefit an older team that has had this, last
benefits the team that comes ready to play.
Benefits a team that's ready to go right off the bat. Yeah, you can't. There's just tiptoeing your way into the ocean.
I don't buy into the age thing, younger, older, because a lot of that is every team has young players and old players. It's a matter of which team, and I not only physically but mentally. The mindset, the mental fortitude is going to be absolutely key here for them to be successful. And I think that's building in everybody's right now through this camp. The Golden Knights, this is a team that's very excited to get there. A lot of guys, they've been on the same page for a while about getting back, the return to play. Now it is, and they're in Phase 3, and can't wait to get to Phase 4.
Well, the Golden Knights, as you can see, the other group coming over here as well, as a look at Alex Tuck, as the Golden Knights continue their training camp. We had another question, Shane, about the impact of a shorter off season. You're only going to have, it depends how far your team goes.
3 months.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I'm not so much, I wonder about the impact of the 7 teams that did not make the playoffs.
So that's exactly.
You're talking 9 months.
Whew. Yeah, the
between
Detroit,
the pause in March and now early December, if not longer.
Yeah, like the Red Wings, who had just a horrible season.
All the California teams, Ottawa, New Jersey. I'm missing one other one, but Detroit, Ottawa, New Jersey, the 3 California teams, and somebody else.
Somebody else. Why can't we remember?
I'd have to go on the interwebs. I don't
want to.
But 7 teams that missed.
Yes. You're
talking 9 months.
9 months. And it's going to affect them. I think for the teams playing, and it's going to be a long layoff for the teams that on the play-in rounds. It's going to be a long break for them as well.
Buffalo Sabres.
Oh, yes. The Buffalo
I didn't come
Sabres.
up with that on my own. Someone in my ear
Someone in your ear told you that, because I heard it too. It's from above.
How could we forget? That was the Almighty chimed in. So the Buffalo Sabres, the other team that did not qualify for what is obviously an expanded playoff.
It's going to affect the 2 finalists the most, right? Because they'll have the shortest turnaround. So the 2 teams in the final maybe would affect the most. But other than that, and I don't even know to what degree.
Yeah. The Golden Knights are going to have a scrimmage here shortly. So this is where we'll see the merger of both groups, right? Where they'll come over here and get a scrimmage underway. But great to see these guys back on the ice. And you wondered at times, Shane, as the longer this went on, and were they going to be able to salvage this? The NHL, I will say, since the beginning, the health and safety of everyone's been paramount.
They've made sure,
They made sure, and the work they did to make this as safe as possible in obviously a contact sport, close confines. You see how close these players are on the bench, how close they are, be it to their teammates or their opponents on the ice. But they're going to be tested every day once they get into that.
And this is a credit for someone who's been through labor negotiations where the NHL and the Players Association did not really collaborate very well in my past. It was great to see them in this time do it very, they were able to do it behind closed doors without too much, bad going back and forth. Look at every scenario, not only to lengthen the collective bargaining agreement and extend it, give, some labor peace for a period of time, but then to implement and put into place the safest possible protocol they could each and every step. The planning is, I can't even imagine as they continue to look now they've got the protocol. They've got to set up the hub cities. There's protocol right now for phase 3 on these players as they enter and exit the building, how they look after themselves. And now you're working on the bubble. And, credit to both the medical staffs, the training staffs, the Golden Knights, and every NHL team. Those guys, the work they're going to put in not only now, but throughout the hub will be absolutely incredible.
Well, the other part of it too, Shane, is the league has been optimistic since the beginning that they were going to find a way to try, if they could, with everyone's safety at the top of the list, to hand out the Stanley Cup in 2020. So much work that's gone into this. We're going to dip back in right now, Pete DeBoer, as the groups kind of merge here. They're about ready for an inter-squad scrimmage. Here's the Golden Knights head coach. Our Knights Report Bulletin continuing from City National Arena. Dave Gosher with Shane Knighty. We invite you to continue to send in some questions. We've already had some excellent questions so far in the program today. And also let us know where you are watching from as well. We should mention, now that they've kind of merged the teams, no Marc-Andre Fleury, right, for the second consecutive day. I don't know if that's a huge surprise, right, because Pete DeBoer said...
It was addressed yesterday. He said, we'll see how it goes. We'll see him this week. Just maintenance day, and, you don't need to read much more into it than that. It's coming right from the head coach. So, also, we've seen the players. We saw all the colors before. Now just the two colors on the ice as going through some more drills here as a large group.
Well, the Golden Knights continuing their second day here of training camp at CNA, and of course with an eye towards it's going to be here before we know it, right? Hopefully everyone's able to get through phase 3 healthy and move on, and then to phase 4, which is going to be Golden Knights will head to Edmonton along with the rest of the Western Conference playoff teams, and 12 teams in the East will head to Toronto, and then they'll get going. It's going to. You said that it's a good comparison. The March Madness comparison is fantastic.
Yeah,
that's great.
For hockey fans, this is doesn't get any better than this. You're going to be able to watch a little bit of everything, see it. It's going to be fantastic. I'm very excited. But we still got an important period here to go through before they get to that point.
We also wanted to remind you the cool down with Darren Millard, Gary Lawless, Stormy Bond, and Tony will take place after we kind of wrap up our portion of the show. So kind of once the players are kind of cooling down, getting off the ice.
I don't know what you call cool down. Like Darren and Gary are kind of like two little bickering kids sometimes. They go back and forth all the time. It's
cool down.
Stormy will have to cool them down at periods.
Have to go in the timeouts. Kellen McCrimmon was asked the other day in his Zoom conference with the media about Peyton Krebs. And great to see. He'll be number 18 in the gray jersey. Peyton Krebs, who was the Golden Knights' first-round pick last year, and it's been well documented. Dealt with an Achilles injury that cut last season short. There he is, the youngster who the Golden Knights really, and they kind of, I think they were thrilled he was at the spot he was at in the draft in that first round, and they took him with their first-round pick in the draft, which was scary to think about, over a year ago now, right? Back in June of last year in Vancouver.
And what an opportunity for him. So, you can't lose in this situation. And I think it was put best by, was it Pete DeBoer who's asked about him? Said, worst case scenario, he gets valuable experience skating. Best case is he comes in and he can, he can be a factor. This is a kid with a ton of tenacity, but that he combines it with skill and speed. Very exciting to see these young prospect players that are drafted. We've seen the growth of a few. As this past year, we saw Cody Glass, Nick Hague, and you'll start to see more of those draft picks start to trickle in, guys to get excited about. And Peyton Krebs certainly falls under that with the opportunity here to join this roster in Phase 3 and into Phase 4. He's a guy that at a young age is. This is where you need to be a sponge. You need to soak it all in. This is just a great opportunity for him as he joins his team. So we'll see how that progress continues, but exciting. And then we haven't seen number 18 in a few years here, but I like 18 Krebs.
I wonder what's going through his mind, Shane. You mentioned he's coming off the injury. We knew that it was going to be a long road back for him. And now this world we've all lived in for the last 4 months, and now here he is in Vegas with the Golden Knights, practicing with the team. Remains to be seen, whether he'll get into any games. That's something that would play out down the road. But all that being said, what a kind of a whirlwind it's probably been for this young kid that, I'm sure he thought this was maybe a few months away, training camp in September, right? Come back and practice with these guys again. But this is a whole different deal. This is training camp in mid-July with the playoffs about ready to resume.
You say that, but a lot of these young players, I never had it. They used to have rookie camps right now.
Yes, right.
It might be he might be a little more comfortable than we think playing at this time of year as a young player. Probably, combines, rookie camps. especially coming into his draft year. Very, very busy time for those players. But yeah, without question, just excited to be part of this, and a guy that's going to use it to, to his ability to gain some confidence, to gain experience, to take a look at pro life, how these guys treat themselves, how they prepare day in and day out.
The Golden Knights going through an inter-squad scrimmage here. A couple of people have chimed in. We asked people to let us know where they're watching from on our social media channels. 2 people from Germany that have.
I've been to Germany.
I have not been.
I went to Cologne.
Nevada and Utah have also.
And Arizona.
Rocky Mountain region. God love you. Perfect.
Yeah.
But Germany, a couple of people from Germany. We had Chile yesterday tuning in, and VGK Worldwide, of course. But it's great to see this, and you had to wonder at times if we were going to be able to see this. Were they going to be able to try to salvage this season?
I'm excited to watch this.
Cup.
Just to watch them playing out there.
This
is phenomenal.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. And Pete DeBoer said, and you mentioned earlier, Shane, yesterday, I would imagine as a coach, unprecedented times, even though the team had skated the groups of 6 and in groups of 12, I would think you wonder what you're going to get that first day of training camp. Well, they liked a lot of what they saw yesterday, and now more of that here today.
Well, there's these players, first time on the ice with the head coach, the coaching staff, they want to show that they put the work in and how they've been able to prepare for this period in this phase 3. So, it's always a thing. There's such a competitive nature to athletes. I can relate more to the hockey athletes. You don't get to this level with being ultra competitive, and that's at all times, whether it's a game, practice, training camp. You want to constantly prove yourself, not only to your teammates, your coaching, your management, and when camp comes, that's exactly what that format provides you to do. And they're able to have a great first day, and they'll continue to try and build off it as they go along.
I have another person chiming in, watching from the UK, and said absolutely loving it. So glad to hear that. I've been there, Shane. I think you've been over there.
I played in London.
I know you. Yeah. In the yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly.
Started the season. What season was that? 07. I was with Anaheim. Played the Kings first 2 games.
The 02 in London.
Yeah, the 02. That's it. The 02.
Yep. Yeah, great city. But yeah, the Golden Knights. It's that line, Carlson, Pacioretty, Stone, that really caught fire, right? When they got William Karlsson put between the 2 of those guys, and had a lot of success with Paul Stastny in the middle too, but a little bit of a different dynamic with William Karlsson in there. So
here's looking at that third line. Nick Waugh is going to take the face-off. That's the example I was talking about. Face-off on that side allows him to use strong hand, and the other side, you might see Stevenson going in. So, lots of fun things to watch here. But more than that, for these guys, this is about timing. They've been skating, but you don't get into the game action where you have to make that play in a split second. Your hands, this is where your hands, your timing, everything will start to come together a little bit more and get you ready for that game action.
And this is, the thing, Shane, and I know you've mentioned this, but a lot of former players say this. When it's all over, you certainly don't miss the practices. You might miss the games.
Look like they're having fun now.
Yeah, but my point being, you miss being around the guys every day.
No question.
In the locker room, and all that entails. And for a long time, the Golden Knights and the rest of the NHL, they were not able to do that. But now they're back really where they love being the most in their work life, in their hockey life.
Well, they haven't been together as a group. Exactly.
Right.
So, the ability to get back, the small group sessions that come in, come out, another group now, day 2 here of being back together, being back as a team. And, that's, we talked about the smiles on the faces, how excited they were. And, listening around the league, I think that's pretty much safe to say that echoed on. You hear that exact same conversation and remarks from every team that was able to get back for day 1. It was kind of like Christmas morning for these guys with the excitement level to be together again.
And you have to hope, again, not shutting our eyes to what's going on across America. You have to hope, and even I've seen other general managers, Don Sweeney in Boston, touched on this yesterday, I believe, or the day before, that he feels that, and the Bruins already had a positive test. There's been other teams, it's been well documented, the teams that have had to shut down their training facilities. His point was there are going to be positive tests. You have to hope that there's not a big flare-up. That's obviously the biggest fear. I think they hope that a lot of that is going to be mitigated with daily testing once they get into Phase 4 and once they get to the hub cities. Our friend from the UK, by the way, Shane, says we get up and watch all the games at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. If you think about the time
there we
change
go.
over to the UK, right? So that's I'll tell you right now, in
dedication.
London, it's 7:14 p.m. right now. So that is a, what's the math there? 8 hours ahead of where we are right now. So that's dedication.
And we've heard that from a lot of our fans
Yeah.
overseas, the VGK Worldwide, and the people that have really talk about a commitment to the Golden Knights to be able to get up.
8 hours now. So, but then in the wintertime, we fall back, right?
Yeah.
You do daylight savings.
Oh boy, you're in the
9 hours.
9 hours. That's quick math, Dave. There you go.
That's, I'll tell you, you don't get that sort of commentary just anywhere.
It's great.
Yeah.
And there's going to be lots of games, not only the Golden Knights, everybody, but certainly people here, and can't wait to see this Vegas team take to the ice, get in the game action, and make a run at the Cup.
Well, it's going to, and as you mentioned, really a little slice of hockey heaven here once this gets going. Games every day, multiple games every day, and with the highest stakes. Kelly McCrimmon was asked the other day about in normal times, you play some exhibition games, you have time to kind of ramp up to the season, but not now. And he was asked about the question of rust. Quite honestly, because they have not played. By the time they get going at the end of July, teams will have not played a competitive game in 4.5 months. His point was he thought all of that would be mitigated by how high the stakes are right off the bat.
I think so. I agree. I think you look at the magnitude of each and every game and how important it is right from the get-go. They've got to hit their stride, hit that top level as quickly as possible, and that's what this is. This is training camp usually is 3-4 days, then they get into exhibition games. Well, this one's going to be a little longer. They're going to figure out things, but I just think these athletes will be ready, and not only physically, and you mentioned it early, mentally they're going to have to be strong, tough, ready to go, kind of dialed in to how they need to play, how they need to perform, and I think we're going to see tremendous hockey when we get to Phase 4, and it'll just get better and better as it goes along.
Well, exciting to see what this Golden Knights team can do. We've mentioned that they have not been, especially at the forward position, all season long, fully healthy. They are now, knock on wood, with Max Pacioretty, Mark Stone, Alex Tuck, all were on the shelf at the time of the pause. And certainly that's not the case now, and it's not unique to the Golden Knights. You look at, a team shame like the Columbus Blue Jackets, the myriad of injuries they faced all year long, and the Pittsburgh Penguins losing key people a lot this year. We mentioned Jake Gensel back and expected to be ready to go. But for this Vegas team and the moves they made at the deadline, adding Robin Lehner, adding Alec Martinez, adding Nick Cousins, to strengthen all three positions.
And they did. They all impacted. Martinez, a great job putting out, found kind of that offensive side to his game a little bit more. Leonard, perfect 3-0. Nick Cousins, just depth, energy. He adds to that line. He plays in right now between those two big guys, Reeves and Carey, that are so physical. Nick Cousins is physical too, but he's got a strong. You got Reeves, who's a good trip, but now you got Nick Cousins, who's one of those. He's a guy who loves to get under the skin of the opponents. He's a guy you love to have on your team and hate to play against. And but also that he's got some skill to his game. Ability to create offensively. So three important pieces here, and now they've been able to get acclimated a little bit more with this team, and especially going through camp. It'll help them going forward as they get set for Phase 4.
And we saw a glimpse of it, right? Shane was, the trade deadline was late February, and then a couple of weeks later is when the pause happened. But we did see during that period of time, the Golden Knights, when the pause came, were playing their best hockey of the year. They had won 11 of 13, 15-5-2 under Pete DeBoer, and they were really ripping it pretty good. Think about the last couple of games. We were on that road trip, Calgary win, Edmonton overtime win, Shea Theodore the winner in the last 2 games they played. But as you see, the Golden Knights continuing to kind of go through their paces here at City National Arena. We remind you the cool down coming up next year on all of our social media channels. Darren Millard, Gary Lawless, Stormy Bond, and Tony Mallard's been in the studio for a half hour. He can't wait to bump us right off the desk.
Yeah,
here.
he does. He's a guy who loves the camera.
Yeah. Heavy makeup, as you would imagine. But no, it's been great to do this once again, day number 2 of our training camp bulletin here from City National Arena. And we invite you to stay tuned. The cool down coming up next with Darren, Gary, and Stormy. Stay on
the stream.
Kind of streaming that on the stream situation. Stream away. It's all yours. So that's coming up next. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. From City National Arena in hot Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Cool Down, covering the Vegas Golden Knights' journey from training camp to the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Day 2 of the NHL's Phase 3. Coaches and players on the ice together for the first time in 4 months yesterday, and today those wide eyes narrowed the focus, preparing for a return to play. As we look down from Studio 31, Darren Millard, along with Gary Lawless, will show you and bring you some players' reaction from yesterday. Just pass along what the players and the coaches had to say after their initial skate and going back into an official part of the NHL's return to play. Stormy Buonantony is here as well to just take us through this journey that is going to be Phase 3 and when the players arrive in Edmonton, what to expect in those initial first 3 round-robin games. But Gary, we've got 2 practices under our belt now with the players just wrapping up at City National Arena as the 2 groups came together again. What's jumped out at you over the last 24 hours?
I think the biggest thing is Pete DeBoer was able to quickly ascertain that his team was in excellent shape and looked like a group that had been skating for 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And they had, because you had almost the entire team here for Phase 1. They all bought in and worked out in dry land situations. And then as soon as they were given the opportunity to skate in small groups, almost en masse. Like I think, at certain points you were maybe one player down for a little bit, but by the very end, it was all of the players participating. And then when you got into later into Phase 2, when you could go to the larger groups, you had, again, every player possible skating and working on conditioning and staying in shape. So he's not spending any time on that. Travis Green, the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, he ended his first session yesterday with a bag skate. Pete DeBoer doesn't have to do that. He is not concerned with their conditioning. He's concerned with making sure the timing is right, getting them into lines, getting them into power play and penalty kill situations, fast-paced drills, some compete drills, and now he's working on systems. That's such an advantage to not have to worry. It's, you have to crawl before you can walk. Pete's not worried about the crawl. He's already at walk, and he's quickly trying to get in to sprint.
The format of practices is going to change day to day. They're not going to do the complete scrimmage on every day. In fact, the difference from yesterday to today was when they brought the groups together, they did some flow drills and some live changes and changing on the fly, and then went into a scrimmage and then finished with more drills. But I almost got the sense from day one that Pete DeBoer and his coaching staff had to give them a taste of the scrimmage just because it's been 4 months and everybody's so ramped up.
One of the things that you cannot simulate when you're skating 5-on-5, or when you have 5 guys on the ice at once, or even 12 guys on the ice at once, is the frenetic portion of hockey where you don't know where everyone is. And hockey is like jazz, okay? It is react. It is the greatest improvisational measure of sport that for me of all. And you can't simulate that when you're just 5-on-5, and you can't really, until you have a bunch of people out there and a puck and everybody reacting to it. It's really difficult to simulate it, and that's what he's trying to do right now. And to me, the next thing, and I don't know how you do this, and this will be really, really fascinating. I was watching Quest for the Cup last night, and they showed the third period of Game 6 between the Penguins and the Predators in 17, when the Penguins last won the Stanley Cup. And the level of physicality at the start of that third period, like everybody moving, there was a body on them. And you can't do that here. Pete DeBoer is not obviously going to risk any of his players banging into one another and risk an injury. But that, once the Stanley Cup playoffs start, the physicality and the will of trying to grind your opponent down, it becomes really important. That's going to be an unknown right until the games start.
Like the physical part, the toughness. I think of Ryan Reeves, and I'll borrow this quote from Johnny Gaudreau of the Calgary Flames, who said, "I feel sorry for everybody, especially in Winnipeg, because Milan Lucic hasn't beat anybody up in 4 months." And Ryan Reeves plays that physical part with Will Carrier and that fourth line. And how do they find their flow? Is it in the first exhibition game and you let it all out, or?
Absolutely. I think in that exhibition game, and we'll find out in the coming days who that's going to be and when it's going to be. But I think that is like it's a regular season game that has big meaning. It's a division game. That's what that game is like for me. And I think if there's a guy in your path and you can have a chance to run over him, you do, because that's instinct, and that is hitting begets hitting. And if you haven't done it in a long time and you're floating around and the other guys start to take it to you, that's a problem. So that is an unknown for me, and something you really want to see develop as we move forward.
Yeah, because scorers can score, shooters can shoot, passers can work on their game.
But everybody hits in the playoffs,
But
right?
the physical part of it, though, you're holding back, because rarely do you get this chance to be fully healthy. So why would you put that in jeopardy?
Yeah, and if you're Paul Stastny, you don't want Ryan Reeves running you over in the corner, and vice versa.
So the coaches worked with more intensity today than they did yesterday in factoring up and changing up the practice a little bit. We don't know all the strategy. That'll be sort of dotted in as we go along. There's 13 days of this training camp, which is an eternity for the players. But we did get a pretty good indication of where Pete DeBoer is leaning when it comes to how he's going to approach the return to play in the round-robin portion, with the lines that he rolled out yesterday and then tweaked a little bit today. And the Carlson, Pacioretty, Stone line was together when they were healthy at the pause. And this is what they came out with yesterday. And there's a couple of different things that jump out here to you.
Well, obviously, I think that you look at that top six, and that is that's elite. That's amongst the very best in the National Hockey League. And I think that top line with Carlson in between Stone and Pacioretty, I'm just fascinated to see them play in a playoff situation, because I really think they're going to be dominant. And then when you have the opportunity to have Smith and Marchessault, who have been dominant together for a long time, Stastny in the middle of them, when you have them coming over the board second, that's an advantage. It looks to me like he's going to flip Nick Waugh and Chandler Stevenson back and forth at center ice. Yesterday it was Waugh. Today it was Stevenson in the middle, and I think that will change. And we've seen.
And it depends where the faceoff is: strong side,
exactly.
weak side.
And we've seen so much of that in hockey. Now Nick Waugh is a pure center and plays that way down low in his own zone. Now we know he can play on the wing. He moved up and played with other players on the wing at other times, but I think there's an advantage to having him in the middle. And but again, you're right. Even Marchessault and Stastny will switch off in the dot. Marchessault will take some face-offs on the right side as well.
Yeah, so Marchessault took a lot of draws early in this season when Carlson was banged up. What do you like about the Carlson, Pacioretty, Stone line that jumps out at you, because that hasn't traditionally been that three-man unit?
Yeah, well, it's funny, when the Golden Knights acquired Mark Stone, I said to Shane Knighty right off the bat, they got to get William Karlsson with him, because he is a player with a ton of speed, a ton of hockey sense. And Mark Stone, for me, is the smartest player in the National Hockey League, and Max Pacioretty is one of the best finishers. You've got everything on that line. Yeah, and Stone is so good defensively in the neutral zone. He strips puck. He's got one of the best sticks in the NHL in that respect. Karlsson has that speed. He can go wall to wall from goal line to goal line, and he can defend. He can get back pressure, but he can also lead the rush. It's just they have an opportunity to do a little bit of everything, but they're all really good at what they do.
Yeah, that's a big difference, right?
This isn't a B+ line. This is an A+ line.
Karlsson
that's a difference.
just gives you that added dimension of speed over Stastny.
For sure. He can also really shoot the puck, and he can finish. He gets in the right spots, and Mark Stone will find him. And all of a sudden, like William Karlsson, we have seen him get hot and go on little streaks where his shooting percentage, is up around 20%. If he's firing it like that, and Mark Stone has the opportunity to find him, look out. And at Max Pacioretty, he has one of the things that Mark Stone brings out of Max Pacioretty is Max knows he has to be the F1 on the forecheck. He has to get in first. He has to throw that first check and try and dislodge the puck. Mark just isn't as quick as him. But if he can do it, and then he can get the puck to Mark, then he can really have an opportunity to finish and there'll be rebounds from Carlson. A lot of good things can happen with that group.
You can enjoy training camp right along with us. The training camp bulletin is live streaming all of the practices throughout this lead up to the return to play and the team's departure to Edmonton. Nick Waugh was outstanding in today's session, knocked down a couple of pucks, and that flip-flop with Chandler Stevenson, but just gives them an added dimension. So he's looking good right now. On the back end, they've brought 12 defensemen to training camp. 6 will obviously play per game.
Yeah, I think that, McNabb and Schmidt have been kind of a lockdown pair for them for quite some time, and I really think, this opportunity, the off period for Nate Schmidt will be really good. It'll also be great for Braden McNabb. Braden McNabb, one of those guys who hits near the top of the league, blocks shots near the top of the league. That takes its toll over a season, and you can see it in Braden's game later in the season. He labors a little bit, but that's not going to be there for him. He'll have lots of jump, and I think Martinez and Theodore, this is the X factor back there for the Golden Knights. Shea Theodore, and it's so interesting to watch him skate. There's 2 factors he has going for him. He has stride length and he has frequency of stride, and that's what makes him. And he glides. It's like he's on glass. It makes him different than anybody else that the Vegas Golden Knights have, and frankly, that most teams have. He is amongst the very best skaters on the blue line across the NHL. And Martinez, his thought process, his experience, he really can help talk Shea through the game and also give Shea a little bit more of a green light to, hey, you want to join the rush? I'll lock things down back here for you. And then I think the Holden White Cloud pairing, and analytically, they were just fantastic down the stretch when they were together, and I just love what they do together.
And coming out of the pause, things are pretty much exactly the way they were on March 12th.
Yeah, and a ton of depth there, because after those 6 guys, you've got Haig, you've got Englund, you've got Merrill, all waiting, and then there's some other guys, Bischoff, Coughlin, Schultz, all young players that would love to have an opportunity to make a name for themselves in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you know that as well as I do. This is when you become a household name. It doesn't happen in November. It doesn't happen in February. And this year it's going to be in July, August, October, September, wherever. This is when all eyes, and there are going to be more eyes on National Hockey League players, I think, than ever before with the pandemic that we're in and the fact that we haven't had live sports. So many people are going to be watching. You get an opportunity to get in there, you could really make a name for yourself.
The anticipation is there. The issue right now is how do you make sure that you are peaking when you get to Edmonton for that first game for the Vegas Golden Knights, which will be the round robin, because of this stretch of training camp that you have. Now, on one side, it's needed, certainly coming out of 4 months off. But on the other end, with a team like the Golden Knights that have been around the city, that have been skating so much, it's also a place where you have to really pay attention in managing your players.
Yeah, I would imagine there will be days off. I imagine there will be maintenance days for certain players. I don't think they're all going to skate for 13 days. I can't see Pete DeBoer doing that. Job number 1 for DeBoer is to get this group that has done so much work and been so locked in and put in such great effort to get to this position the way they are. He's got to get them to Edmonton safe and healthy. That really has to be a major priority for them. Obviously, you want to be up and running, but I think they're very close to that already.
He's going to have hands on the reins, right? Got to hold the boys back.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think you want anybody. You don't want it to get too physical, and you don't want groin strains or anything like that can happen early on in this. But he also wants to get those competitive juices flowing. So it's Ken Hitchcock was on a radio program the other day, and he said that coaching is going to be more important in this. This is condensed. Like we talked about this yesterday. When it's all said and done, if you're a team in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you got to win 16 games. And it's a very small window on what is about to happen. And I think you're right. The coach is going to have his hands on the wheel and be very important.
Brings up a story that a coach told me one time, a National Hockey League coach that's currently in the league, said training camp is always such a different experience for the players, and there's so much focus on that. But that first exhibition game, first couple of times that you stand behind the bench after 5 months off, it's a shock to the system how fast it is, no matter how many years you've been around. This, you're going right into the playoffs. So the coaches, these scrimmages and the changing on the fly drills that we saw when the two groups came together, also a benefit to them.
Well, there's an edge for DeBoer in that, and the fact that he did that at the start of the season in San Jose. Then he had some time off when he got fired, and before he got rehired and came back that first game in Ottawa, he said it was a little bit of a blur. So he kind of has an idea what that's going to be like.
Cool Down is off and running. Darren Millard along with Gary Lawless. Appreciate the Vegas Golden Knight Insider for joining us today. We'll chat with you again tomorrow.
All right.
Gary will be on here throughout the Phase 3 portion of the training camp as the Vegas Golden Knights get back on their feet. Day 2 in the books, and seen a lot of interesting different displays. Alex Tuck has been just lights out. I had a conversation with Stormy Buonantony yesterday about that, and she kind of looked at me like, you're analyzing training camp like it's a regular season game, but boy, was he good. But it's been great to see all the different players back to work. Yesterday, there was a lot of greetings on the ice, guys that hadn't seen each other. Today, a little bit more workmanlike as we watched the groups from Group Rink A and Group B, and then come together for the scrimmages and those flow drills as we bring in Stormy Buonantony from the Vegas Golden Knights and our rinkside reporter on AT&T Sportsnet. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thanks so much. Yeah, practice was fun today.
What did you notice the difference between yesterday and today? Because I really thought it was intense isn't the right word, but just a little more down to business.
Yeah, I would say a little bit more business focused, and things looked a little bit faster to me, and maybe that's just a day of actually being around each other and seeing everybody again and getting used to have the coaches around and having your meetings at the whiteboard, that you're just a little bit more in a groove in a sense, that once it comes to day 2, they're feeling a little bit more confident out there, getting a little bit faster, getting used to skating at that pace.
Have to get a comment. What do you think of Robin Lehner's new pads and blocker and trapper that he didn't wear yesterday, but unveiled during the pause and the graphics with the Knights on them?
Yes, I was going to say Robin Lehner looked great today, and I wasn't just talking about him in net, but those pads are fantastic. Like, that was there's just a unique, great idea, and they look great, and they were working for him today, because usually for forwards, 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, those are a lot of fun. Not as much fun against Robin Lehner today.
Robin Lehner and Oscar Dance were the two goaltenders again for day 2. Pete DeBoer did address the absence of Marc-Andre Fleury yesterday and said we will see him as the week goes on. But in listening to the players in our social distancing way through Zoom press conferences yesterday, who jumped out at you and what really caught your attention?
So there were a few things. I'm going to err on the side of the funny ones first, because there were just a couple little goofy moments that I really enjoyed from the players' Zooms yesterday. And one of them I know you really, really enjoyed was Derek England coming out there talking about some of the biggest differences between training camp right now versus a normal everyday training camp. And he said, there's no testing. There's no fitness testing. He said, that's the worst. Anyway, everybody that was on the call, you could only hear the person who asked him the question and him kind of giggling about it, but you could tell that everyone listening was laughing.
Yeah, around
too.
the office you could hear it because everybody's got the earphones in. It's not like players aren't in shape now, but you just don't have to go through that pure torture of the testing and the VO2 and what goes into that.
I still just remember laughing at Shane Knighty doing that with William Karlsson when he went to Sweden. And him obviously being a former athlete, but not having done something like that in a long time.
That was like a year ago right now.
Yeah.
That trip.
Crazy.
And he was in Europe, and now we're getting ready for the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Bizarre how things have changed.
So bizarre. But another one that I really liked too was you could tell that Jonathan Marchessault had been spending a lot of time with his kids, because he was talking about how he was talking about the Stanley Cup Playoffs this year and how, like so many others have told us, that it's going to be one of the toughest cups to win this year because everyone is healthy. And the term he used was everybody was rested up from their boo-boos. And I just really appreciated that. I was like, you can tell he's been hanging out with the family a lot during this time.
Boo-boos.
Yes.
Never heard that. We've come a long way from lower body injury and upper body injury. That transition
Boo-boos.
was tough. Boo-boo might be a little more difficult to get used to. Pete was in a good mood.
Yes. So now on the more serious side, I really appreciated what he talked about yesterday in terms of his message to the team at this point. And it's all really about how do we get back to that point that we were at the pause. Obviously, they were winners of 11 of 13 of those last games. They were playing really, really well. And he just liked how seamless the team was, how solid they were in their systems, and being able to plug guys in and out of the lineup. And his message was just, okay, we got to have a good foundation if we're going to get back to that. And it was cool to me that he just started the day off right off the bat saying, hey, this is what we need to do, and let's work on building it from the ground up.
Health is going to be such a big challenge, and the head coach is somewhat responsible for that because he's got to monitor guys who have tight hamstrings or groins in the initial stages of training camp, even though they have been skating. But this is a much higher pace, much more intensity. And then the physicality of it as you try to work that in a little bit, never going to what is a game situation, but trying to manage all that to make sure your team's ready when the games start, and the challenge of making sure your team's healthy.
Right, and I think it'll be really interesting to see, I mean, you and Gary just talked about it a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see who does have those maintenance days, who is working a little bit harder or different on certain days, just to make sure that they're maintaining a certain level that they need. And something that Pete DeBoer said yesterday, something I believe Gary Lawless actually said it on the show, on the Bulletin, before Pete DeBoer spoke, was just that he wants to be in a situation where he has to make the tough decisions, because not everybody on the roster right now that's here at City National Arena is going to be going out there to Edmonton. And he doesn't want injuries to be making those decisions for him. He wants to be in the position where he can make the tough decisions of who's going to be the ones making the team.
I thought was interesting in listening to Pete talk and then listening to some coaches from around the National Hockey League talk. There's so much similarity in how they're approaching this and trying to find different ways to keep things fresh through a 13-day training camp and keep the attention of the players. And there's going to be highs and lows, and you're going to have to be hard on the players, just probably to be hard on the players to get their attention through this process.
So what are some secrets to that? You tell me.
I think it's a lot like parenting, where you just got to make sure you have their attention all the time
yet.
right now. But, Pete and Paul Maurice are very good friends, the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. And a couple of their answers yesterday it was like they were reading from the same script. It's just so much intensity. And they've also had a long time to think about how they're going to handle this training camp. But the primary focus for them in what their answers are is just making sure that every day is progress and you take advantage of it without grinding your guys into the ice.
I think it does have to be a step-by-step process, because yes, they've been skating for the last 4 or 5 weeks, but it hasn't been scrimmages. It hasn't been game action, whether when they get to the exhibition games or they get to the round robins games. It hasn't been playing other competition even. It's just been kind of skating with your friends, trying to get back in a rhythm. And now we're seeing a little bit more of that competition level and the fun that it is when you're going up against a goalie. But like, you haven't really had a whole lot of that. And so you do have to do things incrementally, be smart about it. But I think a cool thing that I've noticed just in these first couple days is just how much fun they really are having being together and knowing that the playoffs are on the horizon.
So both sides of that. One, when they transitioned to bring both groups together today, they flooded the ice, and the ice resurfacer was going around, and Ryan McGill, assistant coach, was crossing the ice at the time. So he did the old water ski behind the Zamboni trick, and he was slaloming and pretending he was water skiing. So that was some fun. But Oscar Dansk yesterday allowed a goal that was short side shelf, one that he thought he should have had, and there was the getting mad and upset with himself, and that part of it, which gives you an indication that this is for real, and they're now in a training camp.
Well, and that's something, too, that I actually asked Marc-Andre Fleury about a few weeks back. Just, have you been able to find anything at home that you've been able to, like, have competition in something, feel like you're going up against something? And he said, that's really been one of my biggest problems during this entire time, is that I haven't found something to fill that void. And he'd be doing different workouts and trying to, exceed a level or a limit that he'd reached in the workout prior, but that doesn't do it for you as a goalie. And so he's really, really been missing that. And I'm sure so many players have been missing that.
Competitive coloring doesn't count?
Ooh.
He was doing some of that.
Yeah.
Highly competitive.
I haven't heard feedback on him on how that went. So
We expect Marc-Andre Fleury at some point this week to be back with the team. Robin Lehner and Oscar Dance, the two goaltenders, for the opening couple of days of training camp. Day 2 has wrapped up here at City National Arena. On the player side of things, they will transition to Edmonton July 26th, when all teams are scheduled to depart and arrive at their hub cities. Edmonton for the Western Conference, Toronto for the Eastern Conference. Give us an idea of just the big picture. What's in store between now and that first game?
Well, I think a lot is going to be happening because they're going to have to, get used to this new bubble life, which there's a lot of things. If you read any of that large document that came out kind of detailing what things are going to be, you can't really hang out with any of your teammates, even in your rooms or talking in the elevators. There's things like that are just going to be a very new normal that they're going to have to be getting adjusted to in the bubble life once they do make the transition from phase 3 to phase 4. And then, you're also dealing with, okay, we've got to go from just a training camp to real live action. And it's not just the first game of the season, the second game of the season. This is Stanley Cup playoff time. And when you go through the round robin, they have to play those 3 games against Dallas, St. Louis, and Colorado before they get to games. They have to figure out, okay, what is our goal in this round robin? If we don't win the first game, where does that take us? But I mean, obviously, they want to win every single game they play, but what does that mean for you and when? But something I'm excited about personally is that the Golden Knights aren't playing on the first day of games being back. So there will be 2 days before they actually hit the ice where you can just kind of soak in the qualifying round a little bit, see what's going on, see what the day-to-day schedule is going to be like, and I think that'll be a nice thing.
They will open against the Dallas Stars, and then it's the Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues, that one on August 6th and August 8th against the Colorado Avalanche. I love the schedule for the Golden Knights.
Me too.
Colorado is a team that people have trouble with their speed, and I think that's a great last game after you really get a sense of what the intensity is going to be like and get a sense of your team through the first couple of games, counting that exhibition game.
Well, I like just the order of those 3 games in general, too, because Dallas was a team that the Golden Knights split with. Both of those games, Malcolm Subban was in net, so we haven't seen one of the goaltenders that we actually have on the roster right now in any of those games, and they were both competitive, And then you go to St. Louis, where the Golden Knights dropped the first game. Then the next 2 games were wins for the Golden Knights, but they were both overtime games. They were pretty dicey. It was exciting. And, of course, I mean, they're the defending Stanley Cup champions as well. They haven't lost much from that year. It's a very similar roster from that. And then you go to Colorado, who you didn't get to play that last game against. They were playing, I believe, that next weekend that they were supposed to. And so they didn't get that opportunity, and they did prove in those first 2 games just how fast of a team that Colorado is. They came out with a big punch, and I think that's a great way for them to end this round robin, hopefully with a win, to show that they can have that type of a presence at them at full health too, and see where they really are at on both sides, and then get into the playoffs.
Big stretch, almost 2 weeks, 2 full weeks of training camp here at City National Arena, then depart for Edmonton, get settled into the bubble, practice, get into a routine there, find your bearings, play an exhibition game, and then early in August, they will start off against the Dallas Stars, then St. Louis Blues, and the Colorado Avalanche. Quick thought. As you walk away from the cool down, the debut of the cool down, what jumps into your mind if you're going to walk out on the street and tell somebody about the first 2 days of training camp?
I think that, for one, just as a person that loves hockey, getting to see it on the ice again, that's probably been my favorite part, is just seeing these guys out there and knowing what's ahead. And so my biggest takeaway, that if somebody's on the street asking me, hey, how's practice been? It's been fun, and you can see it on the players' faces. It's been fun. But before I let you go on the cool down, I'm just curious, in this bubble situation, what are your must-haves? What are your must-brings if you're going into the bubble, if you're one of these players going in?
This is what we would call a stormy question, as we've got to know each other on a different aspect, different range and plane throughout this pause. You've been great at these during our night's reports. I would say my speaker, my Siri speaker or Alexa or whatever you want to call it, that would be a must.
I was like, your phone doesn't count. Anything else but the phone.
And 2 great books. I'd need 2 great books just to be able to.
Would they be new books that you have not read?
Yes.
That you've been told?
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm
Big fan. Those are good answers.
The Nickel Boys is a great book. I
haven't
great
read that.
novel. Yeah, it's awesome. I have it on my list. I just haven't got to it yet. Amazingly, you'd think 3 or 4 months I would have, but we've
your
been
game
busy
up
with the
there.
VGK book club, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
I've had other things on my list, but yeah, 2 good books are my must-have,
I love it.
and then everything else I can live with.
Okay.
Out.
I like it.
That's my family.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Stormy. Tomorrow we will be back with you with the training camp bulletin tomorrow morning of Nevada time as the Golden Knights go back to work for their 3rd straight day of training camp, and we will be up live streaming the workout and providing commentary during that process. For Stormy Bonatoni and Gary Lawless and our producer, Alyssa Girardi, thanks for watching this, the Cool Down debut episode. We'll chat with you tomorrow from City National Arena and Studio 31.